Good to see you. So if you got a question, go ahead and stand up and ask it. There you go.
Hey, Mike. One question I had, just tracking with everything that's been going on, 40-year anniversary. I think the leadership team has shared this sentiment of maybe a birth of the global intercession for Israel. Are you going to, how are you going to shift? Are you going to add more Israel sets moving forward? Last night when you shared, it was more like, hey, we're going to miss doing this, but not necessarily back to business as usual. But do you think this is going to shift something even for IHOP moving forward?
Yeah, my guess is it will. Next question. I was being a smart aleck just on purpose for humor. We will, after the end of this, this I'm glad is over is the fasting and the super long days. That's the only it that I'm glad is over. How many of you glad that part's over? But the long days has a community dimension to it, so that's cool. But you only have so much bandwidth to do this for so long, because you got other responsibilities, you got family dynamics, you got lots of things going on, and you can hold on for 21 days, but you just can't do it a lot longer than that, just the human dynamics. So that's the part I'm glad is over, is that intense human dynamics. But the community part, I'm not. But what we'll do with IHOP, our leadership team will meet. We have several different levels of leaders. We got 5 or 6 different leadership groups. We'll all be talking because we're all alerted, like Stuart said so well, that this 21 days is going to reveal IHOP to IHOP. And so I think that we're catching more. And so undoubtedly there will be expressions that will be more focused, more intense, but I don't know what they are, because they will be the fruit of collaboration probably over the next number of weeks. And so, but I'm anticipating good things coming out in the wisdom of God in this. And I'm going to just tease out one word you said, just so everyone's using the very specific terminology. It's that this 21 days is not starting or birthing Prayer for Israel, because Prayer for Israel has been going on for 40 years, for thousands, not thousands, hundreds for 40 years, and thousands for 10 years, or more. What this is a catalytic moment for an escalation in the global conversation. And because I know lots of groups that are really faithful, and I don't want them to think that we think now it's beginning. Well, bless your skinny little heart. I'm glad that you think. No, anyway. So I've just been real careful about that I'm using the word an escalation, a catalytic for an escalation of the conversation. And when the conversation increases in the global body of Christ, the prayer will follow the conversation. Because millions of believers don't know the Israel narrative, and the reason they don't know it, because their churches have been totally silent. They're not against it, they're just totally silent. Some are against it, but most aren't. They're just silent. So most believers are not engaged with Israel simply because they don't know what the verses are. A little bit of conversation, and this will change dramatically quickly, because there's so many verses. And people that love Jesus in the Bible will go, I joke and say, well, when did that verse get in there? And they'll say, I had no idea there was this many passages. So once they start the conversation, they'll discover the passages, even though they might push back for a little while. Because at first, folks that just find out, if they're normal human beings, they'll be a little bit defensive, like, oh, so now that you're focused, we missed it? Is that what you're saying? No, that's not what we're saying. And so there'll be a little pushback. Oh, we have to do it because you did it. But a little bit of time, that pushback will get minimized, and the conversation will escalate, and the Bible verses will be clear, and we're going to have an army of intercessors, of millions of people. If I was guessing, I would say in the 10 years period, the 100 million will be in place of intercessors, not just the conversation. So that's a little bit more of an answer that you're asking for. Go ahead.
Just this is all new to me, and so I feel like I'm just beginning to enter into the conversation.
Yeah, I totally understand that.
But I'm really sobered by it as well. Hearing Joe Richardson
See, and you're the perfect example. I'm going to take a picture. That's a snapshot. I'm very sobered. I'm brand new. That's what will happen to millions of people very soon. That very conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my illustration. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I want to be that. But it's, yeah.
Let's focus that picture right on him. Zoom in real close.
Yeah, Lord. But I'm thinking about after what happened to you 40 years ago, and yeah, and how this may pertain or relate to the black horse prophecy, because what Joel shared, I mean, I'm just being honest. I was really sobered by what he shared and about the article.
What I shared when? Like
Well,
last night or?
Well, I think you may have shared last week of the 4 Saturdays.
Okay, yeah, about a week ago. I think it was last Friday. I think so.
I mean, it just sort of you glossed over it.
Yeah.
I thought it just kind of jolted me a little bit, when you talked about the nature of what you went through physically and your voice and all that. And then I was like,
okay. I get the black horse because at
and
the
I'm
end of
thinking-
40 years ago, at the end of that 20-day fast, I ended up with a tumor on my vocal cords.
yeah.
That was really horrible for 3 years.
Oh my, yeah. And I'm just sitting there like, what is that about, Lord? What is, And so, and then we get this article, and then he starts reading it.
Who, Joel does?
Yes, Joel does.
And what article are we talking about?
Yeah, it was off. It was from.
Oh, the article where they said they didn't appreciate
Oh,
some of the people here.
yeah. And I'm thinking, okay, well, and
I can't think of any names, but Dean
Yeah.
By, I think, that's what comes to
sorry.
mind.
Yeah.
Make sure you tell Dean
Just,
I said that.
maybe you could help. The question that I'm trying to ask is maybe you could speak to how we navigate the kick of what we're engaging in.
Yeah,
and
I
the
think
result,
there's
the consequences of it.
There's
yes.
really clearly going to be a huge kickback of the enemy against this. I don't think there's anything that he hates more than the Jesus and Israel part, because that when Israel accepts Jesus as a nation, Satan goes to prison. That's the next thing that happens. Satan's not blowing up mega churches. He's sending terrorists to Israel. He's not threatened by mega churches. Most of them don't threaten him. They really don't. And he doesn't like them, but he is threatened by Israel accepting Jesus, because when they do that, he goes to prison, Revelation 22. And that's what I think he's more concerned about, staying out of prison. Because if he can stop that, then maybe he can alter his future. I don't know what he thinks, but so yeah, Revelation 12, most of you know that passage a little bit. I mean, some of you a lot, and some of you think, yeah, okay. It's the woman with the man-child. And the woman is the man-child, and the man-child's Jesus, and the woman's the remnant of Israel. Not just Israel per se, not just political Israel or just Jewish people in total. It's the remnant. It's the group that says yes to the Lord. And that's the woman. And at the end of the age, that woman is verse 13 to 17. That woman, Satan, is the dragon, is going after her to destroy her. And then the Lord protects an element of her, not entirely, because many of them are really hit by the enemy in Revelation 12. But that's the most graphic picture. Well, there's others really graphic, but I mean of Satan himself raging. He said he wants to release a flood of trouble to drown the woman. And then the Lord protects the remnant, but then Satan turns his attention on the rest who believe the testimony of Jesus, meaning the Gentile believers that have been helping the woman. He goes after them. So that's what he's most focused on, in my opinion. But he has more than he can multitask. He's not only focused on Israel. He hates us. He hates unbelievers. He hates demons. Demons hate demons. I mean, they hate everything. And so it's not like that's all that he cares about, but I think that's what he cares most about. And so, yeah, as we take a stand for this, the glory of God will increase in the end time church, for sure. When we stand for Israel, more believers, there'll be a greater spirit of revival in the nations, unquestionably. And there will be a greater boldness to stand for Israel. There'll be a greater counterattack, but then there'll be greater miracles. It all goes up together. I mean, it just keeps intensifying the measures of it. So yeah, it is serious. It is no question about it.
Mike, we have a few online questions. Lau is asking a two-part. He's asking you, why do you place the timing of the seals when you do? And how will we know when the first seal is opened?
Yeah, I think all seven, they call it, I mean, some commentaries call them the three numbered judgment series. Okay, because there's the seal series, and they're numbered. There's the trumpet series, it's numbered, and the bowl series. I mean, obviously, we know those three terms, and they each have seven. So some commentators, and I like it because it makes you understand those numbered judgment series. There's three series. You see them distinct from some of the other judgments that are in the rest of the prophetic scriptures, although there's undoubtedly overlap of them. But when you say the numbered judgment series, you get real specific on the seals, trumpets, and bowls. So that's why I like that term. And I think all 21 of them are in the final 3.5 years. And some have it different, and it didn't overly matter what we think. It's gonna be what it is. So some guy goes, I think it starts in the 7 years. Like, okay, I'm not worried about it. Let's just keep praying and doing what we do, and it'll take care of itself. So it's not critical that we know if it starts in the 7 year or the 3.5 years. I'm convinced it's the final 3.5 years, but I'm happy if someone thinks it's the final 7, because that's still distinct enough. It's not. The real argument we're against is that these have not been happening progressively through history, fulfilling the book of Revelation. That's what we're pushing against. And so whether they start the 7 years or 3 years, that is not a giant point to me. But one reason I think they start in the last 3.5 years is because I think what happens at the 7-year mark is the world peace and safety. And the world peace and safety, the 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 3, when they say peace and safety, and that they are people who are outside of the biblical narrative. That's the they, the people that are outside of redemption and Jesus. I mean, they're not saved yet. Many will get saved. But they're outside of Jesus' leadership. That's the they Paul's talking about. And they have world peace and safety, and they are saying it. They're happy. That doesn't sound like the seals are happening. Because in the seals, I mean, the fourth seal, 1/4 of the earth dies. Like, that doesn't sound like world peace and safety to me. And because it isn't. And so, and the first seal is the white horse. I'm convinced that's the Antichrist. And the Antichrist is released on a global stage. Because the Antichrist will be in the picture, and he will be the primary personality engineering the world peace and safety. But he will be presented as a man of peace. He'll probably win a bunch of Nobel prizes, as the most amazing man to cause the economy to recover, to settle peace in the Middle East. I mean, he's going to be like a hero. So he's clearly not the Antichrist in rage, which is, I believe, the first seal is that. And so the world peace and safety is one of the big reasons why I don't think they started the 7 years. And so I forgot the question.
You answered it. It was, how will we know when the first seal is opened?
Oh, okay. The Antichrist is on the public. I think he pulls his mask off, and he's no longer the man of peace. He's aggressor. And though he doesn't have the bow and arrow, he's using manipulation. Like Hitler took over nations with bloodless takeovers. The first couple of nations he took over, like Austria, Czechoslovakia, the Rhineland over on the west. He took over that territory with no blood. But he was aggressive, and he gave them offers they couldn't refuse. So I think the Antichrist, he comes with no bow and no arrow. It's bloodless takeover, but it's aggressive. It's opposite of the face of the man of peace and safety. So that's why I believe it's the first seal, and it's the Antichrist.
That's awesome. Next online question is from Lori. She says, how do I live through the tribulation with a spouse who currently does not care about God's end time plan and finds the book of Revelation too scary to read? He wants me to stop talking about these things, and he's very fearful. How do I handle this?
I think she stops talking about it, and she keeps studying it, and in a minute he's going to ask her, what's this mean? It'll take care of itself. Yeah. Millions are going to say, does anybody on the earth know what's going on? They're already starting to say it, and then many, many millions, hundreds of millions of unbelievers are going to say, does the Bible say anything about this? Because though they don't believe in the Bible in the terms of it makes demands on their moral life, so they don't believe the Bible, but all of a sudden they kind of a little bit believe. Does it say anything about this? You know, oh, I thought you didn't believe it. Well, I don't, but what's it say? And so they're not as convinced atheists as they kind of claim they are, you know. And so when the angel said in Daniel 11:33, which I'm sure you hear in this intensive over and over and over, that the people of understanding will teach many. And when an angel, a mighty angel says many, you could make that capital M-A-N-Y. I think that's hundreds of millions. Hundreds and hundreds of millions are the many, and many will be unbelievers. And I believe that the end time scenario of the Bible, when it happens, will be more convincing to unbelievers than we think it will. It will win many of them, because more fearful to them than the judgments of the book of Revelation is the train of history's off the track and nobody's leading it. That's scarier than the judgments. Like, does anybody know where this is going? Because though the judgments are intensified, then they begin to read them in context of destroying the Adolf Hitler guy, because the judgments are focused on the Hitler guy, on the Antichrist, and these unbelievers, they won't like him. They'll like him at first. They'll go like, this guy, this is not good. This is not good at all what he's doing. So when the judgments hit his resources, which particularly that's where they're aimed at, is the Antichrist empire's resources, these unbelievers will start going, go God, go. I don't really believe it, but go, keep going. And they're going to shift their opinions. They're going to shift their attitude, because then they see, well, if the negative part's real, then the positive part. There's a new Jerusalem at the end. That sounds pretty cool. There's a Garden of Eden. That's where, wow. So I'm not very concerned about the state of mind of unbelievers that are locked in against it, because the escalation is just beginning, and there are a whole lot of attitudes are going to change. But if I was the lady, I would not push it. I would study it and talk about it, and I would have answers available, not push it, because telling somebody a story they're not interested in never works. And especially if you got kids, you know that, you tell them a story that they are not interested in, it's not going to go anywhere. And so just let the hunger be awakened in by the events of the earth.
Awesome. This next question, several people are asking this. They said, Mike, a couple of days ago you mentioned a scripture as being, quote, the end goal for Israel. Can you give us that reference again?
Let me think. Knowing me, there's about 10 of them I would think of. I mean, it'd have to be all Israel gets saved. I mean, I don't know. Tell them it was a long 3 weeks. I was doing an app every day for like 10, 15 minutes. I can't remember what I said on day 8.
That's okay.
But if they can get one phrase, then I can answer it probably. But I'm a little bit spacey right now.
We'll let them come back in.
Hey, tomorrow's day 21, right? Or is today? Someone says the day's 21. Is it today or tomorrow? I don't know when. It ends tomorrow. That's all I know. I don't know when 21 is, but we're getting close.
Sophroni asks, through your daily updates these 21 days, you spoke with lots of optimism and hope.
Oh, good. I thought I was a little grouchy personally. That makes me happy.
But also sobriety about what we may see after the fast. Could you please expand on the sobriety side and what the watchmen should be watching out for? I'm thinking especially of Revelation 12:12. What happens on the earth when the dragon and his host...
Well, and that's the passage I looked at, the dragon after the woman. And that's in verse 13, but verse 12:12, it says, rejoice, O heaven, the saints, because Satan has now no longer in the mid-heavens. He doesn't, in the mid-heavens, we all know the passage in Ephesians 6:10-12, where the principalities and powers are in the air, the mid-heavens. And when they're in that position, the Daniel 10 narrative, the demon prince of Persia can stop an angel in that position in the heavens. But when they're not in that position, they cannot stop the angels coming and going. There's no hindrance. So that's why it says, rejoice, O heavenly realm, that you have total access to the believers now. There's no hindrance. But woe to the earth. And it's not just everyone on the earth, it's the earth dwellers, which is a lot of translations. It's the unbelievers, because he's coming with rage and he's super mad. And because he's trapped on the earth now and he doesn't have the position of power. So that's what 12:12 says. And so that rage is real, but the open heaven is real too for the saints. That's when I believe the Acts 17 to 21, the passage we know, your sons and daughters will all prophesy, and which is the Joel passage, but I typically go to Acts, although the Joel passage has a little more detail than Peter used in Acts 17, 2 verse 17 to 21. Joel 2 has a little bit more detail, so I like to go there, but here's the key phrase that we miss. It says, all of your sons and daughters will prophesy. And we kind of take that word generically, like, in every church of 500, at least 100 will. No, all 100 will. All, it's literal. Everyone will move in the Spirit. And so when we're thinking of the future with an open heaven, with angels appearing, everyone prophesying, I'm sure the levels will be different, but we can't fathom the amount of liberty in the Spirit with an open heaven. But Satan's on the earth and he's raging. But the church is really, wow, they're just absolutely invigorated and fascinated by Jesus' leadership in the supernatural dimension. So the heavens are rejoicing, and the people whose citizenship is in heaven, even though our bodies are on the earth, but the earth dwellers are fearful for what's happening. And so that's the Revelation 12:12 thing. So yeah, it's sober. And the sober part, I'll do my math. I do this math at every Zoom call, so some of you have heard it 3 times already, but it's the idea that if there's 5 million that did the praying, and it was well over 5 million, and the way I say it, I go, they all got 2 friends, so there's 10 more million in the conversation. I mean, right now, by the end of May, 10 million more. So that's a 15 million total in the conversation. What conversation? The biblical narrative of Israel. And once they start the conversation, they're not committed yet, but when they see those, there's 100 passages. That's a made up number. It's more than 100. It only takes 10 or 20. And they go like, what? This is important. Because they love Jesus in the Bible, those 15 million, maybe take a year or two, they'll start going, wait, it's there. They don't find it till they start the conversation. When they start the conversation, they find the verses because someone's telling it to them. And because they're pushing back a little bit, like, well, our church doesn't do Israel. Why do you think you're doing Israel? Where is it in the Bible? Do we have to do this? Who says we have to do it? This one teacher says we don't have to do it. All that stuff will happen, but it will create a lot of understanding in the conversation. So that's actually good. Then I fast forward those 15 million, which is now, end of May, they all have 2 or 3 friends, and at the 3-year mark, this is pure hypothetical numbers, by the way, this is not prophetic, they got 3 friends, if 50 million will be in the conversation. That's how quickly this thing will spread, and it's not long till they see it and start going, oh, because if they love Jesus in the Bible, it's not hard to see it if they start talking about it. If they love Jesus in the Bible and nobody talks about it, it's easy to not see it for 10 more years. But all that's changing as of this May because of the 5 million now going, I don't mind this, but lots will exaggerate. It was unbelievable. And then the people who didn't do it say, oh, really? So we missed out? Is that what you're trying to say? And then it's like, the conversation's on now. And it will really explode. And what will happen, 5 or 10 really smart guys or gals will take a stand against it. That will make the conversation explode. Like someone said, they're against it. I go, don't worry about that. That will put zeros on the conversation. Because then there's a whole lot of other smart people that will answer them. And there's millions in the balance watching the ball go back and forth. And the guys answering the people opposing it, they got Bible verses. And they're going, oh, I never knew Isaiah 62 was in the Bible. What? And so people opposing it actually won't hurt anything. Actually, it will make the conversation go faster and deeper. Really good. So when that happens, Satan will rage more. When that happens, it's only happening because God's timing is coming to the new level. That's why it's happening. This did not happen because a bunch of us got together and said, I think we need more prayer for Israel. We've been saying, thousands have been saying that for 20, 30, 40 years, and it hadn't increased much. This was a God wind on this. Why? Not because it was presented well, not because this, that, or the other. It's the right time. It's the Kairos time. That's why the wind's on it. Why is it a Kairos time? That means events are about to unfold, positive and negative. So this increased number is, to me, a clear indication of the events, positive and negative, about to accelerate. Because this number did not happen because of human zeal. It did not. It was the wind of the Spirit and a sovereign timing. Yes.
Given the inevitability of Scripture and how everything written must come to pass, how should we pray for our leaders if we think that the leader might end up actually being the Antichrist? Like when, like, someone's calling for world peace and it's happening, like, how do we navigate that in prayer?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about your leader being the Antichrist. I mean, I know you're having a little fun with that, but
Well, I don't mean our leaders. I mean, like,
no, any
world-
leader, because there's only one. And the chances of you accidentally praying for him when he's 28 is not very likely, before he comes to world power. I wouldn't even think about that. I just pray for leaders, for salvation, revelation, spiritual wisdom. We even want unbelievers to have godly wisdom given to them, because that happens. In Proverbs 21, the Lord says the heart of the king is in his hands like channels of water. He can move those. And kings move by the Lord's prompting, even if they don't know the Lord, because the Lord's moving on the king. The king thinks, I got a great idea. The Lord goes, he thinks it's his idea. But God does it for his redemptive purposes. So we're praying for unbelieving kings and presidents or prime ministers, men and women, to get divine wisdom, not just the believers. And so we won't know who the Antichrist is, because he starts off as a regional leader, and there's 1,000 regional leaders, and a couple of them will emerge to the top, and you don't quite know which one it is. And so people have theories, and I say, I'm not concerned at all who it is until the abomination of desolation. Well, actually, that's 3.5 years after the world peace. The guy that leads the world peace conversation is the front runner for being the Antichrist. But knowing the Lord, there'll be 3 of them in that position. You're like, well, Lord, come on. There's 3 of them. Well, the Lord says, keep talking to me. I'll make it clear. Like, oh, come on. Just tell me the one. And then everybody will have a pick, and then it'll be the 4th one that's not even the 3. No, it really will be. That's just how it works. I'm like 0 for 100 on choosing right.
Mike, that's awesome. Grace Online asks, before the 7 years tribulation begins, we know there will be things like false Christ, ethnic conflict, war, famine.
Right.
But it can be argued that these things have happened on and off through history.
Right.
Are there more, quote, specific signs that indicate that the 7 years are actually about to begin?
7 years about to begin. I'll say it's slightly different. About to begin. I would think the 7 years about to begin would be the signs of the times, the big ones that are happening, and then we work backwards. If I'm guessing, the birth pangs are, because those 12 things that are the beginning of birth pangs have happened through history here and there, but here's the difference. Over history, they did not create a global conversation. When Jesus said, you will see, that you obviously is not the apostles. They died 2,000 years ago. The you's the body of Christ. So there's only one time in history where the collective body of Christ can see things, and that's this hour of history, because of the internet, because of technology. I mean, even 50 years ago, a little bit started to. There was world news beginning. So the you will see, and you will, all these you will things, are global body of Christ and people. So I would tell people that, yeah, they've happened through history, these trends at various times, but never did they create a global conversation in total, meaning all 12 of them. I mean, World War II was a global conversation, so was World War I. But not too many things were global conversations. So that's the difference right there. So if I had to guess, the birth pangs began when either Israel became a nation in 1948, 75 years ago, or maybe even more convincing when Jerusalem came under the leadership of Israel, 1967, which is 20 years later, which was 55 years ago or 56, whatever. So if I was guessing, I would guess the Jerusalem, because end time prophecy is Jerusalem-centric more than Israel-centric. Because it's not that Israel is the nation of the great king. Jerusalem is the city of the great king. It's not like heaven's called the new Israel. It's called the new Jerusalem. and it's Jerusalem-centric. Daniel 9 is one of the most prominent chapters. It's all Jerusalem-centric. Isaiah 62, Jerusalem-centric. The nation is very important because God made a covenant with the nation, but the nation is the host nation for Jerusalem to come forth. And so God has covenant with the nation gets blessed, the nation has troubles, but it's more specific than the nation. It's the city is the eye of the storm in the good sense. I mean, of all the attention, the good and the bad attention is the city itself. And so I would guess the birth pangs, if I had to pick a date, which I don't, I would pick when Jerusalem came under the leadership of the government of Israel, which would be 1967. So that means, if that's true, and it might not be true, then the birth pangs began to be recognizable globally, and they're all escalating right now. The beginning of birth pangs are. And not all of the other ones are escalating, but most of them are, the other ones as well. And so that's how I would answer. Number one, global conversation. Number two, the birth pangs, because there's a baby that's born. And the baby being born is the new world order with a resurrected man in Jerusalem leading it. That's the baby that's born. It's the millennial earth, like the Garden of Eden and the throne of glory in Jerusalem, and the saints and the New Jerusalem coming down. That's the baby that's born. And so, somebody could say for 2,000 years there's been birth pangs of history. I go, well, I think birth pangs are more immediate and recognizable than that. And one birth pang is intense, and then the reprieve between the next one is shorter. Then it's more intense, then it's shorter, and that wouldn't be true of history when you look at it. So I would say it doesn't really fit the model of birth pangs when you look at 2,000 years. Be real intense and then nothing for a while, and then another one not so intense, and then a short reprieve, and the next one a long reprieve, and that doesn't fit the model of birth pangs. So I would pick 1967, and they're intensifying, but globalization would be the biggest issue, would be globalization. And there, with technology, particularly AI and the the chat GPT thing that's exploding in the earth right now, that is making technology so much more dynamic, good and bad, like right now in 2023. And that chat GPT thing began November, and in 2 months, the different sources, I don't know if the sources are accurate, but a number of them have said 100 million people signed up for it in November, December. And I watch about a 5-minute review on YouTube, probably every other day, 5 minutes on the AI channels. There's a couple of them, and they're saying they're already gotten competitors that are far outdoing the chat GPT right now. And so because I've seen over 20 of these for over 10 minutes, I am really an expert on artificial intelligence. So I'm your guy if you want to know what's really going on. Not. But it's exploding. But that, to me, that escalates everything, that type of technology. If you're not aware of it, just go to an AI channel and you will be, like I just saw one yesterday, and they said the ability that in 25 seconds they can make realistic videos of people that look like they're there with their voice and they're not there, with scenarios that would take a movie company a year to make. They make it in 30 seconds now, and anybody can do it that learns how to get these apps. It's that fast, and it's now. It's not even in 10 years, it's now. And that's going to, they said life on planet Earth, the number of these channels is going to change so drastically in 1 or 2 years, and we won't even hardly recognize certain things. Other things we will, of course. But I don't know if they're exaggerating or selling their product, but no matter what, it's escalating incredibly rapid in a way you could not talk about over church history. Go ahead.
Excuse me one second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oops.
Switch to a mic.
Oops.
Yeah, Mike.
You know that guy, me, who doesn't keep the rules?
Just a question. This historic moment that we are living, how do we connect that to, or how do you see that connected to Ephesians 4:13, the unity of the faith and the matureness? Is that where this is leading?
Yeah, yes. Ephesians 4:13, it talks about the apostles and prophets, the fivefold ministry will minister until, and the key word's until, because a lot of folks don't look at that word, that the church comes to the knowledge of the Son of God. That's intimacy with God. I mean, the whole body of Christ. Right now, the body of Christ, the majority is is still under spiritual dullness of the Laodicean spirit, but there's coming a time to the knowledge of the Son of God. Like, that's like, whoa, to the unity of the faith and to the stature and maturity of Christ. The Laodicean church is going to be as mature. Like, really? Like, Paul, come on. And that is in those final years when, again, at the 3.5-year mark, Satan is cast to the earth, the open heavens, and everyone's prophesying. It's going to be an incredible explosion of the glory of God. But then in the face of persecution and martyrdom, the maturity level will go way up. People, believers that are semi-casual, they love Jesus mostly, kind of, most days. When all the options change, the depth of consecration will go so fast. And martyrdom will be a part of that. And people are afraid of martyrdom when they think of it in the future, but I think in the hour when it's happening, the saints will see the glory of it. They won't try to make it happen, but they won't be afraid of it. And we're afraid of it now because we're unfamiliar with it, but when it's right in front of the body of Christ, I think many people will say, hey, in 1 minute, I'm going to be in the glory of God. And hey, we only got 18 more months before the 42 months is up. We're all going to be united anyway in a minute. So it's going to shift everything, and all the options are going to change. The motives are going to change. It's going to purify the church. So I believe that Ephesians 4:13 is the prepared bride of Revelation 19, verse 7. That prepared bride. Yes, it's before the Lord returns. Yeah. That's right at the very, it's the culmination.
But this is promoting that, definitely.
What's that?
The
Oh,
historic-
yeah.
historic
This is
moment.
the early days of the escalation that leads to that. You're on.
My question was about prophecies yet to be fulfilled. So like Ezekiel 36, 37, those are not yet fulfilled, correct? Are there any others?
Oh, most. And the best way to look at it is they're partially fulfilled. Most of them are partially fulfilled now, and they're escalating. The measure of fulfillment's escalating, and the way I say it is that which happens in fullness at his return is happening in part now, and it's increasing. So it's not an issue of it is or it isn't. Now some, it's an issue of is or isn't. He's not in the sky with angels coming across the sky. That's not happening. So, there are a few things that are in that category. But Ezekiel 36 has a number of things that are already escalating right now, but it's still partial.
Okay.
Good question.
Got one over here, Mike.
Over here. These are good questions.
Just backing up to
This is a smart group.
backing up to the thing about AI. Just a funny story. My son was over a couple weeks ago telling me about that Snap GPS thing, and
I know.
anyway, I was like, well, if it's that good, I said, have it write me a 10-minute sermon on Revelation 1:4.
I can do it in 15 seconds.
No, listen to this.
15 seconds.
In the style of Mike Bickle. And I'm not kidding you, Mike. It like 20 seconds.
Right.
And when we read it out loud, the words, the vocabulary, the
Except for the
phrasing-
verbs were right. I'm sure the verbs are right. I'm a little weak on verbs and adverbs occasionally.
Anyway, it was pretty stunning how it was able to pull
No,
that off.
there's my son Luke. Luke Wave. It's the good-looking guy, so he looks kind of like his dad. But anyway, he was with me in January, and he said, "Oh, let's try this Chat GPT." He said, "What does Mike Bickle teach on the end times?" And it popped out in 15 seconds, and I said, "My goodness." And the people are disturbed by it. This is a low-level disturbance, but because in December, a lot of folks, even in Ivy League schools, high up, were doing their PhD papers. It took them 1 minute, and they were like acing everything, and they didn't even study it. They just did it, and it produced a 28-page, I made up that number, 28 pages, but in 30 seconds. And the teachers didn't know. I don't mean just Ivy League or only Ivy League, but that level of really smart guys out there. And the teachers found out later and said, wait a second, how are we going to beat this system? That's how it started getting more in the global conversation, because there was so much of college students and graduate programs using it in a false way. Yeah, 15 seconds. Again, Mike Bickle on the end times in his voice, just better verbs. It's literally that fast. And now they're making videos that fast. That was only text. Now the video ones are coming out this summer. And I saw a few of them. I went, my goodness. Full videos, not just text like what you just said.
couple of online questions. Sophrony is asking, do you see Aliyah before Jesus returns as having any significance in the end time storyline?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. And there's about 10 reasons, but one reason is Israel's going to have a lot of trouble in the land, and Israel's going to have a lot of glory in the land. And God wants the remnant of Israel from all 200 nations and all the languages and cultures to go through it together, representing the earth. Because the ones that survive it will actually be part of the government of the earth. And he just doesn't want people from one sector of the planet in this. He's going to bring them all back. And maybe not all in the strictest sense, but many, because he wants all the nations, all the languages, all the cultures, and the survivors. And then they become the inaugural government of the millennial kingdom, but it's not all just one-track thinking. It's the diversity of God's diversity of the planet. So that's one reason they're out there and they're coming back. And there's about 10 more reasons.
Freddie, let me ask one more online question. Jocelyn asks, can you comment more on the way the church needs Israel in the days ahead and the coming worldwide revival? She said Mike mentioned it passing last night. She'd like to hear more.
Why the church needs Israel?
Yes. In the days ahead, in the coming.
Well, no, I got an answer of that. I don't think it's what she's asking, but what I think I was saying last night was that the church praying for Israel results in a spirit of glory on the church. Not just praying, standing for Israel. It's more than praying. It's money, it's encouragement, it's lots of things. And prayer comes back on the church. I think that's what she meant. But the church needs Israel besides that, because Joel chapter 3, this is a verse that's often, in my opinion, misunderstood or applied wrong. It says in verse 14, multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is in the valley of decision, the multitudes. The valley of decision over, the 50 years I've been walking with the Lord was typically presented as, will people say yes to Jesus for salvation? Will they make the decision? The Billy Graham crusade, will you come forward? Will you ask it tonight? Will you decide? And that kind of came down as the valley of decision to decide to receive the free gift of salvation or not. And I believe that's a little bit, but that's not what Joel's talking about. What Joel's talking about, because you've got to read the first 3 or 4 verses in context, it's in the persecution of Israel. God's going to make every nation decide to stand for Israel or not. Not just every nation, way beyond that, every family unit. Not just every family unit, every individual. Everyone will have to decide, because you won't be able to use money at a quick shop at one of the islands in the Pacific without taking the mark of the beast. You won't be able to buy anything there. And if you don't stand for Israel, if you stand for Israel, you can't take that. And that guy will go and they go, sorry, sir, you don't have the thing there. He goes, well, I can't get it. He won't be able to buy nothing. And he's going to say, well, I don't know if I go for this Israel thing, but I'm getting hungry. I thought I went for Israel. Everyone will have to decide this. That's the valley of decision. But actually, that helps the church, because that's not the question she's asking. But that will bring the church into a whole nother level of consecration. The church will ask much deeper questions about Jesus, the Bible, their life, eternity. Do I believe in eternity? Is it real? Is he good? It really will transform the church standing with Israel in trouble. It will help, it will provoke Israel to jealousy, but it will refine the church too.
So this idea, obviously, that the church is not Israel, the church is the church, and Israel is Israel. So as a Jewish believer who was saved 37 years ago, where am I going? Am I going to be part of that, or am I going to be part of that?
Oh, no, you're going in the rapture. You're going to get a resurrected body.
Right.
The remnant of Israel that's saved at the end are the unsaved survivors of the Great Tribulation.
So any
And that's
Jew,
the 5 million that Zechariah 13 verse 9 is talking about.
So
and
any
that
Jews-
5 million is not an actual number, but it's somewhere in there close.
right? So any Jew saved prior to that is actually this.
Dude, you're
will
going with
go up
us.
in the rapture.
You're going with us.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
I'm so good with that. Especially if Anyway, all right. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, every born again believer goes there. That's why the ones still on the earth were not born again yet. They're the unsaved survivors. And Zechariah 13 verse 9 says 1/3 of the nation will be in that category. So they will survive. Yeah, because if you're born again, you're born again. You're going with us. He says, I'm good with that. What's that? No, they don't have glorified body. If they're 30 when Jesus comes, they're 30 and 1 day old when he lands. So, yeah, and they live their life, and then they go to the New Jerusalem after that, yeah.
So my question is, how are we standing with the sons of Jacob if we're not here? I mean,
Because we are here.
I don't know what you meant about the rapture, I guess.
That's the rapture. There's three views of the rapture. The rapture happens before the tribulation, which I don't think is the biblical view. That's the popular view. The rapture happens in the middle of the tribulation. I don't think that's right, but that's closer to right. That's good enough, in my opinion. And the rapture happens at the end of the tribulation. You know, the Matthew chapter 24, verse 39, he goes, and immediately after the tribulation, the trumpet will blast from one end of heaven to the other. The angel will catch them up. So the rapture happens at the end of it. So we're standing with them all through that period in the glory of God, provoking them to jealousy.
Right, that makes sense. It's like Ruth and Naomi.
Ah, perfect. And you know what tomorrow is, don't you? Tomorrow's the day of Pentecost. Well, the Jewish day of Pentecost a couple of days ago, they always read the book of Ruth on that day. But so the Gentiles, we ought to as well. Because Ruth is the Gentile girl who stands with the Jewish woman who's a widow and she's starving and she's grieving, and this Gentile stands with her. And that's a picture of even the end time church standing together in a time of Israel's widowhood and grief and the pain that she's in.
We have one here, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Oh, over here.
I'm over here. First, I just want to say I appreciate you so much. I live in Texas, and we watch you on the YouTube.
Go ahead. I mean, what do you appreciate? No. Joke.
Okay, so my question is, so I have two little baby children, and they're not of, decision age, or, they haven't decided,
Yeah, I
they're
got
so
you.
little, so.
Yeah.
My
I got
question
grandchildren
is-
like that. I understand.
Okay, so my question is, if we end up dying between now and Jesus comes back, or
Right,
if
right.
or if we make it to the end, right? What happens to my babies? Like, if they're too young, like, will they be resurrected with us, or?
Wait, you mean if you're martyred or raptured?
Well, either one.
Well, if you're raptured, they're going with you.
They are, okay.
You're going with this guy over here too. We're all going
Yeah,
together.
yeah, but my babies will come too.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
what
No
if
problem
we're
with that.
martyred, or even,
What's that?
What if we're martyred or even just
Well,
killed during it?
the Lord is their father more than you and your husband.
Yes.
He goes, they are mine more than yours.
Yes.
I let you help me, but I got them.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so
Okay,
he cares. He's got a plan for them far better than ours, and he says, I got them.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So you're good. They're good. And the thing that I have a message I gave about 2 years ago. I called it "Why Young Mothers Need Not Fear the Great Tribulation," and I gave about 15 points of why we have presuppositions as to why we will be fearful. And if you tease them out, and one of the presuppositions is the average 30-year-old woman who grew up in the church is picturing her 5-year-old being in the youth group that this 30-year-old woman was in that just had pizza parties and were compromising. No, when that 5-year-old, their youth groups are going to be far more dynamic. Trust me. It's going to be a very different atmosphere than pizza parties and movies. And so, I tell these various moms or dads, I go, it's not the paradigm of your youth group is not the paradigm of their youth group. And they go, oh, okay, well, that's different then. Okay, that's a different story. It'll be far more dynamic.
Mike, we have Justin Thomas. He said, Dave Sliker mentioned this morning that studying the 150 chapters on the end times stirred a desire to reread Revelation. He's asking, what would be the most significant or helpful change for you, Mike, when reading Revelation after 3 years of studying and teaching on the 150 end time chapters?
Oh, man. That's tough. The hard word is the word most, because I got about 10 of them that are in first place. But I mean, I love the book of Revelation because of the glory of the man, because the book of Revelation is the revealing of Christ Jesus. So I love the plan and I want to know the plan, but it's the man behind the plan that the book is about. So I am more fascinated by his leadership. Like, I look at these things, I go, who would ever have put that in their master plan? Are you kidding? And I look up, not that I have to look up, I go, why did you pick an antichrist with a head wound? You didn't have to pick that. Why did you do that? He goes, oh, you'll be surprised. Why did you let a harlot Babylon ride on the antichrist and then the 10 kings kill her? Who would have thought of that idea? He goes, oh, I got ideas you don't even understand. I am fascinated by his mind. As I read that book, I go like, what? Because it was a blank whiteboard. He could put anything in that plan he wanted. I call it his grand master plan, his justice master plan. And he's got all these elements, but he's got these other things. Satan gets kicked out of the heavens, and the angels are like, really? Is that really going to happen? Oh, yeah, you'll see, you'll see. So it's Jesus excites me more and more. His passion, his wisdom, his creativity, his deep involvement. So that the man behind the plan, but then the plan itself, because you can read the book of Revelation several different ways. I believe it's chronological. And if you read it chronological there's 5 chronological sections. Like the third trumpet comes after the second. The second comes after the first. It's chronological. Others have it, it's all happening, the 3 judgment series are all happening simultaneous, and they're just different versions of the same ones. I don't think that's horrible. I don't think it's the best way to look at it, but I don't think it's horrible either. And it takes care of itself. But as I see the chronological, then I see there's a chronological section, then there's a parenthetical section describing what's happening behind the scenes in the chronological. Then the second chronological section, then a parenthetical section, a parentheses, the storyline's put on hold. The angel tells John what's happening to the saints, why it's happening, what the enemy's doing. Then the third chronological, he puts it on pause, then a parenthetical section. That happens 5 times. Seeing that chronology and then the parentheses telling us what's happening to the saints behind the scenes and why this is happening is fascinating to me. So I like to see that more clearly.
Hey, Mike. I hear people, especially people that are talking about these things, bring up artificial intelligence, just like you did,
Yes,
conversationally.
Did I tell you I'm an expert on it? I've seen over 20 10-minute units of it.
You among many, it turns out.
Well, I'm your guy.
Can you tell me, just clarify for me, in your opinion, how that is specifically connected to Matthew 24 and 25, the signs of the times? Because that's the context that you brought it up in.
Yeah,
Is it
it
just
is.
The globalization, like the rate in like the higher rate of the exchange of ideas and like the quickness of change? I heard you kind of mention
Yes.
that offhand.
Yeah, the AI is what will cause globalization to go at rapid speed. And globalization means global identities of everybody. There might be a few, but almost everybody, if not everybody. Global digital currency, enforcement of digital currency, surveillance, state control, not only deep fake, all kinds of holograms, all kinds of persons will show up and it's not even them, but nobody can tell if it is them or not. It's not even real. The deception will go off the charts with AI. I mean, a guy will stand here with a hologram fully formed to 10 feet away. They won't know if he's there or not. I mean, that's how good it will be before it's over. It's not there yet, but on video it will look that way, but it's going to be in person before it's over. He says it's happened. Show me that 5-minute video, then I'll really give you the answers. But no, it really is. Well, there you go there. And but it's going to if it's not. But he says it is. And I've known Randy for 40 years, so I believe him. He's a smart guy. But my point being, then we go, how will we know? I'm glad you asked, because the dreams and visions will be happening everywhere. There'll be a prophetic spirit of the church like never before. We will have a spirit of discernment like way beyond what we're thinking. If we're thinking the enemy pulled off that, the Lord says, you think I can't beat that by the Holy Spirit? Are you kidding? There's no problem. There'll be so much divine revelation happening in that day that the elect don't have to be deceived. And so, but anyway, the AI will speed up the control, the systems, the enforcement, the deception, on and on and on and on. Okay.
Hi.
So this totally caught my attention. My daughter's name is Ruthie, and I've never heard this thing about Pentecost. So I just wanted to ask for you to expand on that just briefly. But it was cool because right before the fast, my son's name is Ezekiel as a watchman. So then the Lord had briefly was showing me Isaiah 61 is like Ruthie with the Gentiles being grafted
Right.
in with the Jews with the oaks of righteousness.
Right.
And then 62, which is the watchman. Mine's being blown.
I can't wait for your next 5 kids.
So I just wanted to hear again, can you explain, is it Messianic Jews who read Ruth on Pentecost? Or
No, the Jewish nation
Jewish
reads
nation. Yeah, can you
the book of Ruth, the whole Jewish nation. I mean,
Okay.
in theory, like on Purim, they read the book of Esther that day.
Okay,
And then they read,
what's the connection to Pentecost? I guess do you know?
not is this the Feast of Pentecost, the Jewish one? That's why the Christians just jump on that one, and we just do it on a Sunday. And they do it a few days before because the Jewish calendar is different every year. But why did they pick Ruth? Is that your
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
Does anybody know? I don't know the reason why they picked Ruth. Go ahead. She knows. There you go. Good question. I don't know.
Because Boaz represented the kinsman redeemer,
You know, Jesus. Boaz represents Jesus. Go ahead.
and Yeshua is the kinsman redeemer, and I think it's God's very clever way of keeping the prophecy going. But they also look for the kinsman redeemer. They're still looking for Messiah, and that proclaims that.
Yeah, very good. So Esther and Ruth are like read a month apart, less than a month apart. The whole nation, in theory, reads them. Everyone doesn't, but a lot do. Yes.
Hey, Mike. Hi. In the end time, when the Lord separates the sheep from the goats, and the difference between them is what they did and did not do. Does it have a dual meaning? Is it what they did for Israel, or is it just throughout all time what they did and did not do?
You know, it's Matthew 25, and it's that passage in verse 31 to 46, which is not a parable, because Matthew 25 has 2 parables. You know, the 10 virgins, it's the first parable, the first 13 verses. Then the next parable is the talents. But the third one is not a parable, it's an actual event. But some people think of it, the 3 parables, and go, no, that's Jesus on his throne of glory, and all the nations come before him. That's actual, that's not a parable. And the question is, he separates the nations based on the way they treated the Jewish people. So our question is that through history, or is that in the final 7 years, or is that in the few months or years after the Lord returns? That's the question you're asking, I'm thinking. And I think it's all 3, because the Lord is so brilliant in his leadership and we think AI is smart. He's got all of it from history. So I'm assuming it's all 3 levels. It's history, the final years, and even the months afterwards that he separates the nations. Now, the tricky part about that passage, Matthew 25, 31 to 46, is that it starts off with nations, corporate, but it ends up with individuals. So it's like, is it corporate or is it individual? The Lord says, both. Just do right, you'll be good. Like the individuals, you don't throw nations into hell. You throw individuals into hell because they go to hell at the end in verse 46. Nations disappear. They don't go to hell because it's an entity, it's an organization. And so it goes back and forth between corporate not back and forth. It starts corporate, it becomes individual. And so interestingly enough is that the word nations, as most of you are aware of, is the word ethnos, which is the word ethnic groups. So there's 200 political entities of the earth called nations, but there's 14,000 ethnic groups. So according to missions organizations, some have it a little bit more, a little bit less, but that's a good average number from the missions demographics, 14,000. So is he separating the 200 nations, or is he separating the 14,000? My guess is is maybe not 14,000, but it's not the 200. He's breaking it in far more specific than that. The way different geographic areas, like does America stand for Israel, or does America not stand for Israel? Well, Texas goes, we love Israel. That other group goes, we don't love Israel, whoever they are. I'm not going to mention anybody. But anyway, they go back and forth. And so my guess is it's regions and people groups. That's a guess. And so I think it's history. But I think the part we're not thinking of, I mean, naturally you don't think of, but I think we need to, is the reconstruction period after the Lord returns. Because we think of the Lord coming back and everything is just like done. And that's not how it is. After World War II was over in 1945. And, in May in Europe and then early September in Japan or in Asia. And so 1945, the Jews from prison camps, 3 years later, a number of them were still in prison camps. 3 years later, they were not in prison camps behind guards, keeping them in there. They were in there, they had nowhere to go. Nobody would bring them home, and the Gentiles took their houses and said, we've had your house for 6 years, we're not moving out, because Europe was in poverty. I mean, famine was everywhere, starvation, the economies were broken. And the Jewish people went back to Poland, and the Gentile goes, we will shoot you if you don't leave. This is our house. We're not giving it to you. They had nowhere to go. They were still in a number of the prison camps, sleeping there. Again, no guards to keep them there, but nowhere to go. Is you under a bridge or in the same place they slept? That was for 3 years. I mean, thousands and thousands. So this idea that when Jesus comes, it's settled. It's like, after Civil War, the 10-year Reconstruction was disaster in the South. Disastrous. Well, and way beyond the 10 years. But I mean, it was unbelievably intense after the war was over. So I think that a Jewish person starving in prison, all those those six things that are mentioned, you visit me, prison, whatever, food, clothing, whatever those six things are, it's the Reconstruction period too. So I think that even people get a chance to respond. Because remember Isaiah 60, the kings of the earth are taking these Jews that were taken to the nations against their will, they're bringing them back and paying their way back. Well, all the systems are broken. It's not like they're getting on 747 first-class seats. I mean, many things are broken. But the governments of nations are paying their way back. It takes time for this to happen. And many Jews and Gentiles will be attacked by other Gentiles that are the unsaved survivors. I mean, they're not people who took the mark of the beast, but the people in Europe, I mean, the, quote, Christian background people, the way they turned on each other, Gentiles against Gentiles, Gentiles against Jews. It was unbelievable what happened the 3 or 4 years after the war. This is going to be far more intense than World War II. And so there's a reconstruction period that we don't think much about. And I think there's quite a few things in the balance. And I'm not trying to figure it all out because I can't. But I go, there's a little bit more going on here than meets the eye when I read Matthew 25.
So good. That was our last online question. Do we have any in-house? Okay.
Considering that the global economy is going toward a reset with currency and digital, where do you see the church? Are we participating in that until the mark of the beast?
Okay, so what's the church? The global currency is not the problem. Global currency is the context that the problem comes out of. So if you're on global currency, I don't think you're going to have much of an option. And I'm all for pushing back and saying, I'm going to hang in there as best I can. I remember in the 70s when I got saved in 71, and there was this rapture fever in 71. Everybody was pre-tribulation rapture in 71, 72, 73. How many can remember that? I mean, all the movies, there are about 10 movies, and wow, we were all excited any day now. And MasterCard came out, and I remember the craze. This is the mark of the beast. I mean, we were all thinking it. And we were going to take a stand and die as martyrs until we couldn't get on a plane. Then we got a MasterCard, Okay, well, I guess we're not going to die, but okay. I don't trust you, but then, well, I guess I'll go ahead and get the hotel room too since I'm here. And so everyone got MasterCard or whatever they got. I don't mean MasterCard versus the other, and then we found out, that wasn't the problem. The problem was the 18% they didn't, no, anyway. The problem is that set up the next thing, that set up the next thing. It ends up it's about a 70 or 100-year trajectory, not a 5-year one that we thought in the 70s. And so the digital currency isn't the issue itself. It's an acceleration of the context of the problem, but not the problem itself. Like an embedded chip in your body is not the problem. The embedded chip in your body, there will be reasons people do that are good reasons, but it's the context for the bad thing. It's not if you have an embedded chip in your body, you're going to hell. It's if you make a covenant with the Antichrist, you're going to hell whether you have the chip or not. But it's not the chip, it's the covenant that's made to the Antichrist that you need to take the mark. Or you have to make that covenant to get the mark, but it's not the chip. And someone said, well, if somebody goes, I ain't gonna go for that chip, I go, oh, I'm all for you. I don't want to get it either. But, I could think of some person that's in some difficult medical situation, they get it, oh my God, he got the chip. Oh my God, it's too late. No, it's not. It's a medical thing. And so I would be very cautious and push back at every level, but those in themselves are not the biggest issue. It's where it's going because of that. And so we got to distinguish between those.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, when it comes to like searching the scriptures for the end times message, especially for someone who's pretty new to it, I know there's the 150 chapters, and obviously you can just read many scriptures on it, but where do you recommend starting when it comes to, obviously you're very familiar with a lot of the scriptures and like what the end times looks like. How would you recommend starting that journey in the scriptures?
Absolute number one, Matthew 24. Jesus, he lays it out 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, he lays out lots of 1, 2, 3, 4 broad strokes, And Matthew 24 and the other ones, Mark 13 and Luke 21 are supplements. They give a few more details that are not in Matthew 24. Matthew 24 plus the other details of those 2 chapters, because it's the same message on the same moment. So that's where you start. Then secondly, I would study the epistles of Paul, particularly 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. I would do that even before the book of Revelation. I would put that in. Then you start dabbling with the book of Revelation because it's so interesting. Verses chapter 1 to 5 is real exciting about the throne and the glory of Jesus, etc. But the events are like chapter 6 to chapter 19. That's where the events are, because people studying in time, they're wanting to get the events. And some people criticize people, don't do the events. Well, you want to, because you're thinking, I want to get at least a picture so I can get a little idea what's going on. Because like if you're putting a puzzle together, you typically get the box and you put the box there, you go, oh, the blues, oh, it's over here. And seeing the broad strokes helps you understand the pieces. So I tell people, don't apologize that you want to know the broad strokes of the picture. The book of Revelation will give you more broad strokes after Matthew, and then 1st, 2nd Thessalonians, and a few other of the Paul's writings. Then Revelation to get broad strokes, chapter 6 to 19. Then I would probably go, if I had to the book of Zechariah. Zechariah's all 14 chapters is about Jerusalem. Some of it you'll get lost in, but most of it's not super confusing. A little bit of it is, but most of it's not. It's pretty straightforward. Okay. I'd get a commentary or two to help you navigate Zechariah, because that's the easiest. If you're really cool, you're going to tell everyone, oh, I'm really into Daniel. I'm just super into Daniel. They go, oh my gosh. Because that's hardcore symbolism. And if you're into Daniel, you're an insider. Oh yeah, I'm Daniel. Sure, Daniel, like those guys do Zechariah, whatever, they're beginners. But Daniel's a little rough to get through. Daniel's the last chapter, 6 chapters of Daniel. A lot of good stuff's in it, but I remember when I first looked at it, I went, oh my goodness. Yeah. It's a little bit rough. I wouldn't tell people to stay away from it, but don't start with it. Yeah. I would get in a little bit of a other broad strokes understanding. And what I would encourage people, there's a guy named Thomas Constable. Okay, get that name. So you're typing Constable. Okay, I'm watching you. S-T. No, you missed the S. Okay, there you go. You got, okay. Oh, so she did. It was the T. The pressure was on. No, Thomas Constable. He wrote a commentary on all 66 books of the Bible, and he gives context and real brief. And for beginners, I tell people that's good stuff. I mean, he'll take, let's say Daniel, and he'll take a page for a chapter. Whereas that other book takes 30 pages for the chapter. And you go like, come on, I don't have 30 pages. It's like 4 days of studying to get through 30 pages. Get the broad strokes. And the only thing I disagree with Thomas Constable is he's pre-trib rapture. But because there's only about 3 verses in the Bible that you can even take that direction, it never shows up in his commentaries. I mean, I know that's his position, but I never run into it. And there's a reason, because those verses aren't there. But anyway, so I recommend people to get his stuff, and don't worry about pre-trib rapture thing, because he gives context and he gives broad strokes. And like when I'm in a hurry, I'll go to him if I want to know what, just say, make up a chapter. Zechariah 8:9. I want to get the broad strokes. I got an hour. Constable will give you the snapshot right off the bat. And it's free. It's on the internet. And I just highly recommend him. Dallas Theological Seminary professor, good guy. Yeah, so that's where I would start.
Right over here, Mike. Please.
Yes. Regarding the 12 tribes of Israel, but there's the lost 10 tribes.
Yes.
And I really haven't heard IHOP discuss where they come into the big picture of the end times and how they get unlost in the process. Could you address that?
Yeah, that's the sort of stuff only Stewart will figure out. I'm telling you, he's not the only guy that's going to figure out those lost tribes. And Stewart, they're not all Africans, okay? No, we talked about that. Some guy said that. We had some fun with that a couple years ago. But they might be in some, though, in all reality. But the lost tribes in 721 BC, so that's when Isaiah was prophesying, Assyria, which was the world empire, came down and took the 10 tribes of the north and dispersed them in the nations. So nobody knows where they went. And so the 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and the Levites were scattered among all of them, so the Levites too. They became Judah. So 721, Assyria took the 10 tribes, they never came back. 150 years later, Babylon took the other 2 to Babylon, but they came back. So the word Jews comes from Judah, because Judah was this big, and Benjamin was like that little, and so they called it Judah or Jews. So people go, where's those 10 tribes? They're spread about the nations. And we don't really have, some groups have theories and we don't, because they're lost in the intermarried of the nations, but God's database is perfect. And so I'm confident he's got it, but I don't know how anybody can figure out how we're talking 2,700 years ago, married deep into all the nations. The Lord knows. I mean, half of you might be Jewish and not know it. And so, no, I didn't mean to stir that up. But, we just don't know. And so our team has just said, you know what, there's 5 or 6 groups that really got theories and they trace this. And I go, let's not speculate on that. There's so many other topics that have a bit more clarity on. Let's stay on those. That doesn't mean we won't ever understand a little bit, but we admittedly don't understand that much on that, because the histories, they're difficult. They're hard to know which ones are real, because there's 4 or 5 groups that oppose each other and they claim to have the real data, and I'm not smart enough on those histories to know, so we haven't done a lot. Stuart, any ideas on that? Okay, but if anybody will figure it out, it will be Stuart. Okay. Actually, he would be the one.
You mentioned the 3 years that the concentrated camps still focused there because they had nowhere to go. What happened after those 3 years, just in efforts to understand how history unfolded and possible
What happened
parallels?
after 3 years? Something amazing. This guy named Harry S. Truman from Kansas City caused Israel to become a nation. That's where they went. They went to Israel. They were stuck in camps. Not all of them, but many of them. It was horrible. Horrible. It's like Syria. The 5 million in Syria drove over to other nations. A couple of years ago, and they were stuck in refugee camps. Horrible. It was that they're either refugee camps, but a number of them was still the prison camps, because they had no shelter besides those whatever places, that they were staying in. But when Israel became a nation, they started coming back in mass numbers. So that was 1948. Okay.
Can you tell a little bit more about what the mark of the beast is going to be about?
Yeah, the mark of the beast, Revelation 13, that's the famous chapter. And Revelation 13 is the Antichrist chapter of the Bible. The big one is Revelation 13. So if you're thinking, where can I find him? He's a few other places, but that's the big place, is Revelation 13. So the mark of the beast, the false prophet's the one that sets it up. That happens when the abomination of desolation takes place. And it says in Matthew 24, you know, the famous Matthew 24, the one that you want to get first, Matthew 24. In verse 15, Jesus said, this is the only thing Jesus ever said. He goes, when you see the abomination of desolation, then you will know. And what is the abomination of desolation? It's when the Antichrist goes into the temple in Jerusalem. Because he's been a man of peace for 3.5 years. 3.5 years now, he pulls his mask off. I don't think he really pulls the mask off, but you know what I mean. He pulls it, and now he's a man of war. He walks into the temple and says, because he's let the Jews rebuild the temple, or maybe they've rebuilt it before that. Maybe they've done that, but he lets them start the sacrifices. Then he goes, no more sacrifices. I am God. And the Jewish people go, excuse me? I am God. You will worship me. That's why it's called the abomination. It's the greatest abomination of human history. And not only that he claims it, that at the point of death he enforces it. That's why it is the abomination, the greatest one ever. And that's what it is. You will worship me or you will die. Now, many don't die because he can't round them all up in time. But he goes after to kill whoever will not. But he never, ever succeeds. I mean, he kills a lot, but he never gets most of the earth. But he's trying to. And so that's what the abomination is. He walks in and declares himself as God and creates an economic system with legislative enforcement to take the mark of the beast. You put the mark on here or here, and you can't buy or sell without it. And you can't take that mark if you don't worship the beast and call him God. So that's what the abomination of desolation is, and that's what the mark of the beast is in a nutshell. That make sense? Good.
So that just really helped. So first of all, thank you for all the detail. This is mind-blowing processing, so period.
Yeah, it just takes a minute. But just so you know, a year from today, you look back and say, that's no big deal. That's pretty straightforward. But at first, it's like, oh my gosh. But a year from today, it will seem so much simpler.
And actually, that's where I'm going with this.
Oh, okay.
Because what was just said there, even, it's just, the enemy is so not creative. It's just history repeating itself again. It's going against the first commandment, worship the Lord and only the Lord, and it's Daniel repeating himself and the golden night, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so I get it. I love all the detail. I can handle that.
Whoa.
Whoops. But I'm also a high-level person, and I also know all of us are going home.
Yes.
And I love how this School of Messengers overlapped with Pray for Israel, with the Israel fast. And I know my friends are going to go, so what is that all about?
That's exactly where it's going.
So I'm thinking, how do I summarize? High level. And we had a comment with Stuart, if he's still in here, that I think in my head I heard it as, it's not the philosophical, it's about the covenant.
Yes.
And what I also heard all throughout here, and when we left here, I'd go in the prayer room, and sure enough, they're praying covenant and singing, heart, and it's about God's heart for his family.
Yes, right.
And how
covenant,
we talked about, do we understand how these Messianic Jews are getting persecuted already? You know, I mean, are we aligning our heart with the prodigal son story, with the father longing? And that's our motivation for praying for Israel. And I'm trying to figure out, is that the right summary?
Yes.
Is that the right message to be
That's
taking
a good
home?
beginning,
Or
yes.
how would you, okay, so how would you expand upon that? That's what I want. I want my nuggets to take home.
I would think you say something like this, that in the Bible, I don't have it all clear yet, but something about Israel, God is going to keep his covenant to Israel. And that's the proof he'll keep his covenant to the rest of us, because he's a covenant-keeping God. And Israel's the story of God, because God takes broken, weak people, keeps his covenant when they sin. That's the story for the earth. But he puts it in a microcosm, so we can look at Israel and see our story there. So he keeps covenant to broken, sinful people who say no to him. He keeps going after them. So because he does that, we have hope, because he's going to do it to us. But he now wants us to be a part of him going after them, because he loves them. And we do it in the overflow the way that he loves us. And we go, wow, if he loves them that much, I want to be a part of this. And then he promised to cause blessing to come back on us as we partner with him to go after them. So I would say something like that. Yes, yes.
The prodigal son's father running.
Yes.
To the son.
And
so
and
you run
that
through prayer for Israel.
and that
or-
father's running, but he wants you to run with him to go get his
Yes.
kid.
Okay, so I'm on track. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you are very much on track.
So my question is kind of more curiosity regarding the prophecy of 24/7 prayer on the Truman property.
Oh.
And so number one, I'm curious if you guys have an idea of when that's actually going to be happening. I realize buildings will have to be built and stuff. And number two, is that more of like an auxiliary thing with just focus on Israel, or is like the Redbridge Center going to move there, and that's just kind of what IHOP does from that point on when that happens?
Well, the Truman property steward, we're talking about you again, the Truman property, is leading a team of about 10 or 12 real high-level professionals. Meaning, what I mean by high level, they've got resumes. Most of them are, 60s and 70s. They got 30, 40-year resumes in construction and architecture and engineering that are like stunning. And they love Jesus, and they're working together on a plan. And they've been working for a year on it, and they know a whole lot more than a bunch of preachers know of how to do this. And so we don't know the details, but there's 5 or 6 things they're working on together of options. And so the speed of it, we don't know. They know more than we know, because things are always more complicated than we think. But the idea, we assume that our prayer room will move there. That's an assumption. That's not a fact yet, but it's an assumption we all have. And but it will be more than a prayer room. There'll be a number of things happening there beyond a prayer room. If you take the Redbridge Center, this is 3 acres, or some say maybe 4. That's 160 acres. If we took something 10 times bigger than this whole shopping mall, that's only 40 acres. We still got 120 to go. So there's a lot of room to do a lot of stuff there. Where's the Truman property? It's a secret we can't tell. Hey, you guys, it's secret, okay? No, it's right on I-49. When you go to IHOP U, you've been to IHOP U? As you're driving towards IHOP U from IHOP, you look over there, there's Truman Shopping Mall over here, right? Can you see it? All those stores over there? Over here is the 160 acres of trees. That's the Truman property. It's also on the map that you were given. But as you drive there, it's as far as you can see. You can't see the back of it. It's further than you can see. It's all the Truman property.
So I'm curious to know your thoughts on going back to like the mark of the beast and all of that and the whole like system, the economic.
So we're moving off the Truman property already?
Yeah.
Okay. Just kidding, just kidding.
But I was curious what your thoughts on the Antichrist possibly being Islamic and Mecca actually possibly being the city that is referred to as like Babylon.
Yeah, you're thinking of Joel's book, and me and Joel are good friends, and I disagree with him on that, meaning I think he's Islamic, I think he's Christian, and I think he's Jewish. I think he's all 3. And he would focus on him more being Islamic, and I think it's a merger of many things. And he will have probably a number of capitals. One of them is going to be in Jerusalem, in Israel itself, and in Daniel 11, verse 45. And so where he comes out of, Turkey undoubtedly is key, and Joel's really right on that, got a lot of evidence. But I think it's going to be more diverse and more complicated and multi-layered and one of my reasons I disagree with Joel is just a practical reason. Islam is such an ugly religion. And the Antichrist and the harlot Babylon is so sensual and so opposite of Islam. Islam is, I've talked to a number of guys, really experts on Islam. They go, Islam's imploding. Like the denominations across the earth, Christian, and like the Catholic Church. It's breaking. It's not going the other way. It's breaking. Many are leaving the system. They're tired of it. And the idea that it would be the most attractive thing that people would be sucked into, I go, it's just ugly. It's oppressive and ugh. And so because it's ugly and it's imploding, I get this feeling that's not the one that's going to win the world. And so But I believe he will be Islamic. I believe that he will be Christian, and I believe that he will be Jewish. I believe he's going to have all of them. That's just my opinion. You say, where do you get that from? I said, it really doesn't matter. When a guy stands up and says, you got to worship me or you die, then we know who he is. And then, so I'm not worried about it. It doesn't change anything to me. You know, if he's Islamic or not Islamic, it's the same storyline. Yes. But Joel's probably one of the best Bible teachers I know. So I take him very seriously. It's just, but I've tracked with him over the last 20 years on that point.
Hey, Mike, just in thinking about the last few years and the season we've all come out of with the pandemic, in our region, which is Hawaii, actually...
Well, bless your little heart.
Yeah, thank you.
Hawaii.
Yeah, we're suffering.
Hey, we got Longview Lake down the road.
Yeah, the beach is a little different.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
But Hawaii, you know, it's the last several decades, it's been very dominant with the local church planting movement, of course, the missions movement with YWAM having a hub there.
Fantastic. Yeah.
But it was interesting because COVID actually helped to strengthen the prayer movement and the praying church. But my question for you is, how disruptive was the pandemic to your mandate or the IHOP mandate? And has there been any leadership changes, you know, dealing with governmental compliance or just, you know, the crazy politicizing? Like, is there anything that you guys are tweaking moving forward or, yeah, that's the question.
Probably. That's such a broad question. It's hard to answer it with details, but I know one thing. The devil overplayed his hand because without COVID, we wouldn't have Zoom technology all over the earth. Without Zoom technology, we wouldn't have 5 million people doing this Israel prayer. So whatever the devil did, it backfired on this point because the body of Christ across the earth is talking, and it's normative now. And before COVID, there's no way I'm going to get on a phone call with a whole bunch of guys over there or hear sermons this way. Now it's so normal that none of us are afraid of it or none of us are put off by it. So it really went the other way on the body of Christ in that one area particularly. And so I think there's probably a number. I don't have just the 1, 2, 3 that comes to mind right now, but I mean, a lot of compliance, that's really bad in the globalization, but the globalization is going to happen. I don't mean we just cave in and let it happen. I think there are resistance points that we make, but we know there will be an antichrist world system. That doesn't mean we bow down because it could be different if we resist than we know, but we don't know till we resist. So I think that we should take a stand and speak against it and do things, not just to say, well, it's going to happen anyway, let's just give up and give in. Why polish brass on a sinking ship? You know, that's what some people say. It's going to fall apart anyway. Why worry about it? Because you don't know what region there will be a redemptive breakthrough and not fall apart, because all of the regions of the world will be different. You know, like the verse that says, as the waters cover the sea, the glory of God will be like the waters cover the sea. Well, the waters, some place are 5 miles deep, other places they're 5 feet deep. Some places the water is dirty, some places clean. Some place the water is cold, some place it's hot. Some place the wind is blowing, some place it's not. Everywhere is different. And the glory of God, there will be depths of the glory and depths of depravity, and the region next will be different. So we should push for everything righteous. You never know what your region might do. And because it will be like the glory of God's like the ocean. It's this diversity everywhere. And so that's why we keep staying in the battle and we keep pushing forward righteousness, and we don't quite know. So we don't give in, but we do know there will be a world system.
Okay, I'm extremely confused. So you were saying that if you get the mark, like if you have, not the mark, you said the chip.
Yes.
You get the chip when you like need to go to the hospital or something.
Well, I mean, people have the chip now is what I'm pointing at.
What?
So yeah, people have the chip now, yeah.
What in the world?
Not the mark of the beast chip.
Okay, so so the chip and the mark are different.
Yes, but the mark will use the chip technology.
So it's okay to get the chip, but don't get the mark. What's the mark look like?
I don't like the chip, but so I don't want to even say the words, it's okay to get the chip, but the chip is not the mark of the beast.
Like, shuck it down. Like, what is the mark? What's it look like?
Like, get with it, right?
Yeah, like all the way down. Just
Okay.
say it straight.
You saw that one movie, 666 on the guy's head, okay? You saw that movie?
Yes.
That's it. No. I think it will be a technology that is based on what the chip is now. But there are people that have a implanted chip in them because of health reasons, and they pass out, and the people have all their medical records right there. The doctor does, so it's very helpful actually in that regard.
Right.
There are people that have put, I mean, like the human trafficking, it's dynamically hindered if the children have a chip. And so there's nations going, wait a second, we have problems that way more than other nations. So there's a number of reasons people are approaching this that are not in themselves evil. That's all I'm trying to say.
And I've heard you say before, maybe like a year ago, or whatever, that we will actually know.
Yes.
We'll know. So you promise we'll know
Yes.
if it's the mark of the beast.
Yes. Yes.
Because now I'm worried.
Okay. Hey, just say it clear. I mean,
Yeah,
what are you
just
trying to
say
say?
it clear.
Come on, man. No, I love it. I love it. But it's like this. It's like some people think they're going to be tricked on the mark of the beast. It's like if somebody, in a fraternity goes to bed in his fraternity and they sneak in and put a wedding ring on his hand, he's not married the next day because they tricked him and put a ring. You got to actually have a vow and make a vow to the girl to get married. So if you fall asleep and they put a chip in you, I'm going to hell. No, you just, somebody putting a ring on your finger doesn't make you married, particularly if you were sleeping when they did it and they did it as a prank. And so my point being, you cannot accidentally make a vow.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I'm so thankful for you.
Vice versa.
I think we all are. My question is about Revelation 10 and the seven thunders.
Yes.
Okay. And so I'm just going to read it a little bit here. Verse 2. He had a little scroll open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land, and he called out with a loud voice like a lion roaring. When he called out, the seven thunders sounded, and when the seven thunders had sounded, I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up the seven thunders, what they've said, and do not write it down. Okay, so I'm wondering, so it seems like you're saying that the seven thunders you believe are people, but then Chris Reed, when he was here in March, he said the seven thunders were the seven spirits of God. And so I'm just kind of wondering about that.
I think if I'm guessing, the seven thunders are seven messages. They're prophetic messages that are, because the thunder is a declaration. So I'm guessing it's seven messages that probably are multi-layered, so it's not seven pieces of information. Like the book, the Daniel's final vision is 3 chapters. It's not just one point. It's Daniel 10, 11, 12. So I'm thinking of like that would be one of the thunders, not Daniel, but it's probably a multi-layer message and probably has angelic spirits and the Spirit of God connected to it in a dynamic way. So it's probably all of it's true, and probably people will be the voices that God will use. So it's probably people, a spirit, and messages. That's a guess.
Mike, we have 4 more questions in-house and 1 online. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask if there's a cheat sheet that would look something like cause and effect. Pray for Israel, effect. Israel accepts, Satan goes to prison. Is there something like that we can just take and have conversations with people as we leave?
In other words, you want me to just say it straight, right?
Just have it very easy for us to listen.
Check it down.
To the minister.
I love it. That was very cute. But Stuart, did you take that challenge instead of figuring out the 10 tribes? Why don't we get a 1, 2, 3 thing first?
I'm actually joking because you got a good dose of your own medicine on that question.
Ooh, no, I like things 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. I do. We probably have it, but if we don't, let's get it. No, great idea. Really, really good idea.
Who asked that question? Do you mind emailing us first to
SOM@ihubkc.org. Yeah, for real. We need to have a just straightforward 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. What?
I absolutely love the School of Messengers picture with the trumpet. And there's no t-shirts, there's no sweaters. And I thought, looking at the store, there's a lot of merchandise that I'd love to buy, and there's nothing
Alicia's
there.
got your back.
So there, another one.
Stu, we gotta get some merch. No, I think that's a great idea, actually. It probably really is. Oh, wait, someone, hey, we gotta lift that up. A bag, we got a bag. Okay. No, I love it, I love it. Okay,
Okay,
I love it.
I am back to the Truman property.
You're back to the Truman property, go
Truman
ahead.
property. I have just heard little threads, bits and pieces over some years. And I hear you saying that there is a group with a plan.
Hey,
or
let's turn our
some
mic up just a
tentative-
little bit, just so we can hear her a little bit better. Keep
There
going.
is a planning group with plans.
There's a very high-level professional group, meaning with
Yes.
amazing resumes of 40 years each, most of them.
Does this mean that there has been the Holy Spirit indicating more about specifics? And can you
Again,
share some of
Stuart
that?
leads the team. I go to 1 out of 10 meetings,
Uh-huh.
and so they say a whole lot that I'm not a part of, but when I'm in the meetings, I'm going, my goodness, this is so I'm trusting that's happening because they're all men. Are there any women on the team at this time? 2, okay, so men and women, but it's inspiring. I mean, when I hear it, I go, wow. So I don't know how they got it, but there's got a little wow in it.
I'm trusting that it's been through so much prayer. And then also you referred to it, I think the other evening, just briefly, that.
Just talk right in the microphone.
Oh, sorry, that there could be some, just a little bit of conflicting kind of thing going on with Jewish people and thinking about the property, and that it's their property?
Oh,
Did I
yeah,
understand that correctly?
yes. I don't know about conflict, but maybe conflict. No, I've had several Jewish leaders have come here that they go, we're not for Jesus. We love the Torah and da, da, da. But they love the Bible. But they said we're not pretending we're one of you. But understand this: Truman is our guy. He's not your guy. Meaning not yours as in IHOPs, as the Christian. He's not the voice of Christianity. He's the George Washington that caused us to become a nation. He's got our story. And the idea is, he goes, some of them have said, and some of them really strong and others, softer. You guys love Israel, but mostly you loving Israel builds your ministries. And we love it that you help us, but we know when we're into trouble, you won't be there because you're more doing it because you got a downline that likes you better if you stand for Israel, but how much are you really for Israel? Because you don't know our story and our pain, and we don't know that you'll be there when you get it. So they even a few said, you're building something on Truman property. Make sure you understand this is bigger than you. We're involved in this story, and so I love that. I went, wow, that's insightful.
And then last question would be in this whole topic in regard to this. how
Talk
to
right in the
pray.
mic again, yeah.
What are specific things to pray in this time regarding the property?
Wisdom. You know how they say restaurants, location, 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 property, money, money, money. No. No, it's probably hundreds of millions of dollars to do it. I'm just making it up. I have no way of knowing. But the aggressive ideas some of these guys have, that's not a problem. God's got a lot more money than Bill Gates, a whole lot more. He could give $1 billion in one person could do that. So we need wisdom. We need alignment of leaders with the right ideas, and not just leaders to build it, leaders to manage it, leaders connected to the political institutions, the economic institutions, and you need money and just those kinds of things, and protection from the enemy.
Sounds like you're asking for favor.
Favor. We need favor. That's the word I'm looking for.
All right, here are the last 2, and we have 1 online.
Okay.
So I just had a question regarding what possibilities and influences can come down the line from IHOP and was it Bill Humphrey, the ones that connect all these prayer houses globally?
Billy Humphrey has some ideas about what's happening today and tomorrow in Jerusalem, right? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but just all these prayer houses connecting, like he had a connection as well with many prayer houses around.
I would think it's just friendship, meaning I've always been an advocate, the 24 years of IHOP, that we don't want an organization. We just want everybody being friends and they run their own organization. And some have said, we think there ought to be a network and we're all in one. I go, nah, let's not do it that way. And so I think the network will be relational, not organizational with authority in it. Am I answering your question?
Well, yeah, but just thinking like even how you were saying yesterday about like now everybody's going to be praying for Israel. Like some were praying for different countries, but
Yeah.
just one day they all came together to pray for Israel. And just
Oh, no, that's the 5,000 prayer networks that are 4 times a year, 4 times in 2023, they're praying for the same part of the earth. Today, they're all praying for Israel. On April 17th, they all prayed for Mecca in the Middle East. On January 22nd, they prayed for Beijing in China. And on October 31st, they're praying for India. And so that's not, that are all houses of prayer. No, they're prayer ministries. They don't say house of prayer. Some do, some don't. That's 5,000 under 2 different networks together. There's thousands more that aren't a part of those 2 networks.
so if all those networks, I was just like come together and they kind of collectively continue to pray for things collectively, like that's what I was thinking. Like, is there an influence of from this now starting connecting?
I think 4 times a year, first time in history that's happened. They said maybe next year we'll do it 5 days. So they're leading it because the different folks are going, hey, this was good. Maybe we'll do 6 days. So, I'm not one of them. I'm following what they say. When they say, hey, will you join us? Like, of course. We got to pray. We got to pray anyway today. So, yeah, we'll join you. So I'm not in those conversations. I'm just on the recipient end of whatever direction they have. We got to do it anyway. We're always looking for new customers,
Justin Thomas online asked, at the One Thing conference in 2018, you said that there were between 20,000 and 25,000 praying communities in the earth. Do you have a more recent number for how many exist today?
No, I don't. And more than praying communities, that would have been houses of prayer, more than just a prayer meeting in a church. These were people that had, it could be a church with a prayer room, but it was dedicated to prayer. Hours a week, and I don't know how many hours, but those were numbers I got from other people. I've never spent time on those. I do appreciate the guys that do that because that takes lots of work to do that. Like, oh my goodness. So I get numbers from them, so I can never validate the numbers, but I can validate the people. They're honest people who care about the right numbers. And those are the numbers they gave.
Awesome.
Last one. Yeah, sorry, it's me again. So the thing that's really been compelling to me, and you talked about how Islam is just so unattractive that you doubt whether that's going to be...
to 8 billion people is what I mean.
Yeah, and I totally get that because it is ugly.
It's not sensual. Like, they don't get drunk. They're not supposed to have immorality, and the Parliament of Babylon's got all that on steroids.
Goes right to my point, which is the emerging religion on planet Earth right now that's even diverting church members is pride. Pride is a religion, and it is the antithesis of Christian humility. And I don't know how that plays out, but I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, because pride, the pride movement under the banner, under the rainbow flag, which is an affront to God in and of itself, seems to me to have a religious fervor behind it that is captivating. Because you think, as a Christian, you might be anti-homosexuality until your son comes out. Then all of a sudden you start reconsidering the issue because now you're doubting whether God would really condemn your son to hell. And so it changes the entire conversation. So any thoughts on pride as a religion and not just sort of what it now masquerades as?
I think the harlot Babylon then morphs into the Antichrist system is way bigger than any one unit. I think all kinds of components. There will be Islam components. There will be denominational Christian. There will be Catholic. There will be Hindu. There's a bunch of components. Because the idea is to get billions in one direction and the devil's pulling the strings. So I think there's going to be all kinds of those elements. But I don't think one group is the big group, is the point. And I think Islam will totally be involved.
Mike, thanks for being so generous with your time.
Thank you. I love it. Thank you guys for being here.